Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday Weed Waffle from Foundfood. I'm your host, Gav Forager. Please excuse me for a minute while I slip down this muddy bank and fall in a river. Just for your entertainment, of course. Yeah, so this week, it's been chucking it down all day. I had a brief sunny moment and I thought I'd pop out, but it looks like there's a good chance I'm going to regret it and get soaking wet doing this, but never mind. So this week we're talking terminology. Specifically quite broad terminology about what it is we do. And the reason for this is because there's been quite a few times I'm talking to friends, family, complete strangers about what it is I do. And I mention foraging and I mention bushcraft and they glaze over. They haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. So nowadays, I tend to say that I do foraging for wild food because throwing the wild food in there really does make it a bit more obvious what it is I do. But the bushcraft thing is a bit more complicated. So I teach bushcraft and I teach bushcraft teachers to be bushcraft teachers. But when I mention this to other people, particularly those from abroad or those that just aren't into their outdoor activities, they haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. And when I explain what it's actually about, when I talk about part of it is finding wild food, um, fire lighting, selection of the right wood for fires, being able to light fires without an ignition source, so using friction fire lighting, chemicals, that sort of thing. Knife skills, axe skills, saw skills, maintenance of your tools, being able to build a shelter outside, cooking outside, all those sorts of skills that I think of as bushcraft. And when I explain this to people, generally what happens is they say, "Oh, you mean you're a survivalist?" Um, and well, I guess you could say I am really. I've got the skills of a survivalist, but it's not something I call myself. Occasionally people say, "Oh, so you're a prepper." And again, I wouldn't normally call myself a prepper, but I'm fairly well prepped, so maybe I am. Anyway, so I've got an opinion as to how these various terms connect and interact and how they go together. It may not be the same as your opinion. There is no official definition, so it's open for conversation. I'm perfectly happy to discuss this with anyone who disagrees, maybe. So let's start at the top. As far as I'm concerned, survivalism sits at the top of this pyramid. And survivalism is very much, in my opinion, is about survivalism at all costs. I must survive at all costs. So a scenario that might make you think of survivalism could be in film and TV, say Tom Hanks in Castaway, or the TV series Lost, or it could even be real life situations such as the aeroplane that crashed in the Andes and the sports team found themselves having to resort to cannibalism. Now that is survivalism. That is survival at all costs. And that can mean uh, without taking into consideration the environment. So, for example, I'm in a situation where I need to survive, and there's a very rare tree right next to me, and I need to burn wood to survive. Well, I'm burning the tree. Same if there are some rare orchids that I know are edible and I need to eat to survive, I'm eating the orchids. That's kind of what survivalism is about. Now, survivalism, it got a bit of a bad name because of exactly that. It's at all costs. And rightly or wrongly, people got the idea that survivalists were going out into the wild and practicing these skills at all costs and damaging the environment. That, on top of the fact that the popular media decided to hook onto it and take the mickey out of survivalists for preparing for the zombie apocalypse or the alien invasion. And I think those instances were quite rare. So the term survivalist has become unpopular. People don't really use it anymore. Now, maybe one step down from survivalist is the prepper, people who are practicing their preparedness. So what that is that's like survivalism, but not at all costs. So practicing the skills that you need to survive, but not actually destroying the environment while you go along. But it can be more than that. It can be things like canning, drying, and preserving food so that you've got a large store of that. One of the most essential tenets of prepping, as far as I'm concerned, is the elimination of single points of failure. So, for example, with food, there will come a point, say, for example, society breaks down or there's a nuclear war. There will come a point where we will run out of prepared food in shops and warehouses that we can buy, barter, or take. So part of prepping is making sure that you can and preserve and get a good stock of food that will keep you going for a while after that situation has happened. However, that does create a single point of failure, because what happens if all of that gets stolen from you, or if there's a flood and it all gets ruined? Suddenly you've got no food. So that's where, as far as I'm concerned, foraging comes in. So when that happens, if that happens, I know that I can go out there and forage for wild plants, trees, and mushrooms. Also tied along with that, you might include hunting, trapping, and fishing as skills to eliminate that single point of failure. So that's just one example, and that's what prepping is, being prepared, having that preparedness. So as part of prepping, you might consider that bushcraft is a useful skill to have. So bushcraft skills, as I mentioned before, things like being able to build a shelter out of natural materials or out of what you've got handy. Knowing how to use your knife, your axe, and your saw in a safe and responsible way, but also knowing how to look after your tools to make sure that they stay usable and they stay good and sharp. Firelighting, finding the right wood for your fire, building different types and shapes of fire, cooking on fire. What else would you include in bushcraft? Well, there's all sorts of bits and pieces. So you might want to include things like medicine as well, wild medicine that can help you while you're about. So that's where bushcraft fits into it all. And my specialist area, the bit that I get really obsessed about, is foraging for wild food. And foraging for wild food, you can see as a part of bushcraft. So foraging for wild food as a part of bushcraft, as a part of prepping, as a part of survivalism. That's how you could look at it. I know plenty of foragers that just do foraging and they're just obsessed with foraging, and that's all they're interested in. That's their specialist area. That's what they do. And that's absolutely fine. And then some of us see it as part of a bigger whole. And that's where we are. So that's where I wanted to go with terminology. So I'd be really interested to hear what anyone else has got to say about it. Do you agree with the whole survivalism versus prepping thing? Do you agree that bushcraft is just a subset of prepping and that there are other skills in there that wouldn't be called bushcraft? Do you practice foraging? One thing I get asked quite a lot is, does foraging include meat and fish? Well, not in my mind, it doesn't. As far as I'm concerned, meat and fish come from hunting and trapping, not from foraging. Foraging is about plants, mushrooms, trees, that sort of thing. I could possibly stretch my definition of foraging to include things like roadkill, because it isn't hunting or trapping as such. It's making use of what you find around you. But yeah, that is a bit of a stretch as far as I'm concerned. So that's pretty much it for terminology. I've come out prepared to get wet, but what I didn't come out prepared for was the sudden drop in temperature. It's absolutely freezing out here, and we've had 2 weeks of glorious sunshine and high temperatures, so this is payment for it, I guess. And there you go. You see, I didn't come out prepared for what we have. However, in this particular instance, I'm going home in about 5 minutes' time, so it doesn't really matter. So here I am, standing in a stream in the countryside, beautiful countryside all around me, and I can see all sorts of magnificent things. I can see, hold on, let me turn the camera around for you. So I can see fresh hawthorn leaves, which are good to eat. I can see a hazel tree, which will make good stiff poles, particularly for making a shelter. Also useful for friction fire lighting. I can see this is a sycamore tree. So we've got fallen sycamore wood there that could be useful for fire lighting. I've just been past an oak tree. There's lots and lots of facilities here. I'm by a tiny stream. I won't get any fish from here, but it does lead into the River Irvon, which does have fish. Used to have salmon, but now I think it's just trout and grayling nowadays. So there's lots and lots here, lots to use, lots to make use of.